And it's become super clear to me, even more over the past few weeks, that to really understand this space, you gotta put it on your face. But all I have for you here are words and pictures in this session to talk about some of the structure and development of our AR platform. So I'm worried that at some parts I might lose some of you, but I have to try. So this is a developer track, and it is not a hands-on workshop, so you can put away those laptops, silence those cell phones, and if you got here by car, don't forget to tip your Uber driver. We are now presenting the architecture of Snapdragon Spaces, brought to you by Qualcomm. Yes, Qualcomm, the world's leading wireless technology innovator, creating chips and other technologies that are inside the vast majority of the world's leading mobile computing devices, bringing you a world where everyone and everything can be intelligently connected, fueled by the convergence of ultra-fast 5G connectivity and global innovation. Today, we're going to go over an overview recap of Snapdragon Spaces, elaborate on the importance of cross-platform XR, introduce the Snapdragon Spaces Services app, go over development workflows, give you an update on the latest with AR as a feature, present some next steps, and close out with a summary. So what does Qualcomm do for the XR ecosystem? Well, we start with our XR1 and XR2 chips, which are optimized for AR and VR. To take advantage of those chips, we also provide perception features and technologies through software. And together with our reference designs we provide to our OEMs, ultimately those turn into the amazing end products that you all know and love. And now, today, especially today with our launch, we're fully engaging with XR developers directly through the Snapdragon Spaces XR Developer platform. A platform which we introduced at the last AWE conference in November 2021, shortly having worked out initial agreements with a number of our partners. The concept's quite simple. Instead of OEMs having to build their own SDKs to access common perception features, we built the Snapdragon Spaces platform so developers can contribute to an ecosystem that OEMs can then tap into. At the same time, developers can minimize their code branching and distribute to all Spaces-compatible platforms with a single app. We also need network infrastructure that comes from our operator partnerships. And finally, for us at Qualcomm, having the developer partnerships means that your feedback can help influence the development of our platform features so that together we can help you make the apps that you're envisioning in your mind. Here's a set of cuts showing just some of the experiences that our early developers have been building on Snapdragon Spaces. Presented here are Trip, a meditation app ported over from other XR platforms in a very short amount of time. Flinker, a brand new dragonflying experience built for Snapdragon Spaces by Forward Game. And Air Derby, a mobile airplane game from our own Snapdragon Studios that was converted into AR. Now, all the video here was shot directly through the lens, so this is as close as we can get to showing you the true AR experience. And you can see all these demos and more for yourself this week over at our booth. But more on that after these words. Big picture. Mass adoption is an eventuality. But today, we are still at the beginning of a long road. You might be thinking, we should just wait. When we say, why wait? But you might say, why build? And why now? For us, product development takes years, and we need to know as early as possible what are the right use cases to build for in order to be ready so that when tomorrow comes, we won't be on our own. We'll be working alongside you. For developers, having access to our technology algorithms and centralizing development with our SDKs makes it easier to target new compatible AR glasses products as they come out automatically. But look at the ramp up on this slide. Why should developers jump in so early? Well, mass market is somewhere on the horizon. These are analyst predictions, and actuals could be higher, they could be lower. This is the time where we, as pioneers, are taking calculated risks in order to become not just players, but leaders. Early entrants into the VR market assumed the risks to go all in early, when there was no market. And that produced such acquisitions as Alchemy Labs, one of our own Qualcomm Ventures investments. By learning at the dawn of the industry before the majority of developers jumped in, they had the advantage and got ahead of the game when the market eventually matured. And there's a similar opportunity for AR players. In fact, there's 3 of them. 3 companies that jumped into AR and stuck it through are now part of the Qualcomm family and are part of the Snapdragon Spaces team. Wikitude for their core perception technology in mobile AR, Clay Air for their hand tracking technology, and Augmented Pixels for their cloud mapping technology. These companies all had exits and now have access to our wide corporate resources to continue on their AR journey as part of a bigger company. And this consolidation is happening at even more companies as the race to the metaverse heats up, and our goal is to help enable all the players in the space. So as they say in the movies, get in, losers. We're going to make a metaverse. How do we get to consumer mainstream XR? There's a number of answers, and no single one will resolve it. There's no magic bullet. It takes an army of solutions. But one of these really important ones is content ecosystem. You can have an amazing device, but if there's no content, then there's no utility. And XR content development can have a strong learning curve and require high investment for developing on a single platform. And if that platform only represents a fraction of an emerging market, the low return on investment is hard to justify. Content needs to live on as many platforms as it possibly can in order for developers to spend more time innovating and less time integrating. You know who said that? Yeah, that's me. But I am not alone. Others are here with me. From Unity and Unreal Engine to VRTK, the Magicverse, and Microsoft's mixed reality toolkit. One long-running discussion through all that over several years has been around a set of open standards called OpenXR. This consists of both a runtime and an open source standardized set of APIs to allow an easier technology integration in the AR and VR space. With AR and VR being relatively new in the democratized space, every platform has or has had their own way of reading in the world, interpreting it, and then rendering XR output. Typically, that resulted in each platform having their own SDK with their own APIs, and those would communicate with their drivers. If you've ever worked with Steam VR, the Oculus SDK, HoloLens with Holo Toolkit, Daydream, Magic Leap, even if you did use Unity or Unreal for your game engine, these platforms still had their own separate SDK integrations, where you had to wire up the input and then set up the output. Kronos, the working group that manages the OpenXR standard, said, maybe don't. And said, let's instead define a set of standard APIs that all platforms can conform to. And this has been a long-standing effort. We've been watching this for years, and it's finally coming to a really great place of fruition. And what's the benefit of OpenXR? OpenXR compliance means that instead of the platforms having to come up with all of their own custom API definitions, then developers can instead implement OpenXR APIs to do the same predictable behaviors, and existing apps that target OpenXR should have their code be largely compatible. But what about game engines like Unity and Unreal Engine? Well, if you use game engines, they've done a great job standardizing their components to communicate with OpenXR APIs as available, allowing you to swap out implementations when you build, but leaving the game engine components largely consistent. In some cases, it's as simple as a few checkboxes, actual checkboxes to just set up the different implementations, where you can leave your scene scripts and your scene setup largely the same. And what does that all have to do with Snapdragon Spaces? Well, with Spaces, we're delivering the first ever OpenXR compliant runtime for head-worn AR on Android mobile phones. If you're familiar with AR Core services, we deliver Snapdragon Spaces services in a much similar way, as an APK optimized for Snapdragon-powered mobile devices. which makes you probably think, does this run on any Snapdragon-powered mobile phone? And the answer is no, not yet. Every journey begins with a single step. And that step starts today with the Motorola Edge Plus and the Lenovo A3 glasses. This is our starter dev kit, and we've worked closely with the fine folks at Motorola and Lenovo to deliver this first platform for our early developers to start playing with the form factor. Let's talk more about Spaces services. By supplying our perception services with Snapdragon Spaces, we're baking in our optimized XR services to take advantage of every ounce of power that mobile devices can offer. So how does perception work, and what is perception even when we talk about it? Let's take a look. Every feature requires a computation to occur. And you can think of that computation as processing of computer vision and/or a combination of other sensors and eventually making decisions. Let's show some visual examples. When a service runs, every fraction of a second, one or more sensors capture the state of what they are sensing and analyze them. An image tracking service uses visual sensors, like the cameras in the headset, to analyze if certain image patterns are recognized with each momentary screenshot. Does it see the image or images that they're looking for? Same with object tracking. Are any of the observed geometries in place that we're looking for? Plane detection. Can we calculate planar surfaces from what's in front of me? Hand tracking. Do I see hands in the scene? And then what's the location of each joint that I can see? If you want to use this information, these checks need to happen at some rate of frequency, usually like a high rate, 30 frames per second or more, with calculation done at every moment. That's a lot of little worker bees. Now, why do headsets get hot so easily? Usually too many of these services are running at once, and they're not typically optimized for the platform, for the hardware. So instead, intelligent apps will pick and choose these services, spinning them up only when necessary. And the advantage that we have here with our Spaces services is that they're set up so that they take advantage of the optimizations that we've worked on our XR platforms. So we package them all these services up into an APK that gets installed in the device called Snapdragon Spaces Services, and this gets distributed on the Google Play Store. So one of the other advantages here is that Spaces services can be improved over time without waiting for a full OEM mobile OS release. So the ultimate XR technology platform will eventually consist of more than just the services that we're providing this year. Imagine, this is not a roadmap, but just imagine this platform having eye tracking, human segmentation, face tracking. The list goes on all the additional perception features that we can come up with and offer over the course of the next few years. And as we grow and add those services, we can release them through a simple services APK update. So the two advantages here are that the services are optimized for Snapdragon chips, and we can improve both our perception offerings and our computational efficiency over time and push them directly to end users on our own cadence. So let's discuss the development workflow. We want to make this easy. In Unity, once you have all the right packages, it's as simple as using Unity's XR plugin management to select OpenXR with the Snapdragon Spaces feature group. There's some project validation that ensures you have the right settings, but from here, you can select the various services to activate. And once your project is set up, any new XR project, what's the first thing you typically do? Connect the positional tracking. And that's sending the rotation and position information from the device, in this case glasses, down to the game engine, and simultaneously passing the rendered frames back up into the glasses to display. AR Foundation already does that for mobile, and that's the beauty of what Unity has been doing with AR Foundation and OpenXR. If you have an existing AR Core app that's set up like this, then after switching to OpenXR and Snapdragon Spaces in XR plugin management, you don't have to change any code or even the scene itself. You can just build and run. And for input, we've also standardized on Unity's XR interaction toolkit for both gaze-based and controller-based interactions. We recommend reading up on the documentation for XR interaction toolkit, as well as the documentation on our site for customizing the companion controller, as that just went live on our website like yesterday. Here's a teaser video showing MRTK, Microsoft's Mixed Reality Toolkit, running on Snapdragon Spaces with this type of companion controller input. If you've already built apps using MRTK, you should be able to just port those apps to Spaces super easily as we roll out developer samples and guidelines over the coming weeks. Ben Lang, at midnight, almost 36 hours ago, you tweeted asking if anyone was using MRTK in game projects. If you're out there, we just made it easier to find out. For Unreal, the project setup is similarly straightforward. Starting with an AR project setup, you copy in the Snapdragon Spaces SDK files for Unreal, activate the Snapdragon Spaces plugin and the OpenXR plugin, and your basics are good to go. We also provide a series of blueprints for Spaces integration, and all of these steps are viewable on our developer portal. Back in December, I asked, what are the barriers to consumer AR adoption? I got a lot of answers from the community. When looking at all of these, the one that stood out the most for me is input familiarity. Because without that, we'd be creating a lighter, cheaper, more complex system that still would take too long for people to onboard. Without a familiar entry point, I'd say nothing else matters. We have to think about the consumer here. Getting a handful of machine workers and doctors to use AR in the enterprise is great, but it is still just incremental adoption. If we want to reach mass audiences and be able to connect with them where they are, then the critical step leads us to AR as a feature. Introduced last year at AWE, I want to give some time to follow up on what is my favorite R&D project, which is making its way as a significant part of the evolution of Spaces. Again, day one, interacting with Spaces apps is using the phone as a companion controller, as we described earlier, and you've likely seen on other platforms. AR as a feature is using the phone to its fullest extent, with AR glasses being an expansion of the phone. I also call it headphones for the eyes. Back when I showed this video, this ran, back in November, on literally about 5 physical devices on the planet. And that was it. Now, with our general release of Snapdragon Spaces, I'm happy to announce that all our Spaces dev kits can run these types of apps with our Snapdragon Spaces OpenXR runtime. It's a little catch, because while we can run these apps, building the apps requires a few more steps and partnership conversations, shall we say, before we can release those tools to build these apps using our SDK. So stay tuned, but we're making great progress. So meanwhile, check this out. As a proof point, we took an existing mobile app sample that we downloaded, sample project, and added a virtual camera for the AR. And that was it. Notice how I'm playing this game. Just have my hands on mobile device, because it was built as a mobile game. But in 5 minutes now, if you look around, I can step into that world. Now, I believe this technology, once it's fully released, will give us our DK1 moment for AR that we sorely need, where hundreds or thousands of mobile developers can start playing with AR versions of their apps in literally minutes. We'll cover the complexities of that in a session at a future conference. To make sure you don't miss it, it's really important to know that now is the time for all of you to follow, like, and subscribe. So next steps. Our developer portal is now open to the public, where we offer technical support for our SDK and platform through our forums. But developer support encompasses several areas, not just technical. We have our Pathfinder program, where we just announced additional members of our cohort today. And that offers you a little bit of potential grant funding and dev kits. We have the Metaverse Fund, which is more of an investment vehicle. And we also have our T-Mobile and Hubrom accelerators, which are programs offered by our operator partners, where we offer workshops and a lot of hands-on support. Finally, as far as encouraging development in these early days, I'd like to announce here that the price for these, for the phone and the glasses, is roughly $24.50 MSRP. But thanks to Motorola and Lenovo, we're able to offer these dev kits to developers at a discounted price of $19.99. And that price, I call these margins Motorola razor thin. Some applause for our suppliers for enabling this discount. While supplies last, $19.99 is a US purchase price, and international pricing may vary. Some assembly required, not recommended for children under 13. But you gotta try these on, and you can do that at booth 105 in Hall A, starting tomorrow. We also have one more follow-up panel on building for Snapdragon Spaces, led by our very own Dan Flanagan, Staff Product Manager for Snapdragon XR. Go check that out to hear more about the developer experience in early access. Let's wrap up. Snapdragon Spaces is our OpenXR compliant SDK for AR glasses. Our apps are built for specific Android phones and leverage a Snapdragon Spaces APK to deliver our OpenXR runtime. We support Unity and Unreal Engine and are working on a new form factor we call AR as a feature. Our dev portal is live and available now, where you can apply to our programs or order our dev kit for a discounted price of $19.99 in the US. Check out our demos in the expo hall at booth 105 starting tomorrow, and be sure to join us for our develop panel at 4:05 p.m. in Grand Ballroom D, which is right here. For now, I'll be outside with the kit to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you all for coming. You've been a great audience, and have a great show.